Comic books have come so far from their original conception. Look around you, they dominate our movies and television. Characters that most people haven't heard of a decade ago are household names. How many people before the Marvel Cinematic Universe even knew who Iron Man, Nick Fury, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Loki, or Guardians of the Galaxy were? What about the DC shows like Green Arrow and The Flash and everything connected to them? And comics themselves have been going through a creative renaissance. Pretty much anything coming out of Image right now is considered a groundbreaking masterpiece. Tell that to anyone in the 90s. They'll think you've gone insane. The point I'm trying to get across is that comics have moved beyond just being seen as cheap entertainment for children. Some people might forget, but for like ever, there was a stigma that comic books were a lesser medium that would never go beyond superheroes and funny animals. The mere idea of a comic book tackling anything mature would undoubtedly be doomed to fail. So what happens when you take an underground comic artist tackling one of the greatest tragedies in human history using funny animals? One of the most beloved, respected, and groundbreaking comics of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, my name is David Popovich, aka the Bookworm, and welcome to Bookworm Reviews. Sit back and relax as we relive the tale of Moss by Art Spiegelman. Art Spiegelman's Moss is without a doubt one of the best examples of what a comic book can do. It follows the life of Art Spiegelman's father, Vladek, in Poland from the mid-1930s through his survival of the Holocaust. But in between, we are shown Art and Vladek's rocky relationship as Artie hears the story to make what would become Moss. The two haven't had the best father-son bonding. In fact, the Vladek in these segments comes off as a real ass. Oh, Dad, have you seen my coat anywhere? Yes, I threw it out. What? You're kidding!
What an asshole!
Yeah. The story was serialized in the 1980s in the underground magazine Raw. Art then took the first 6 chapters to make the first book titled My Father Bleeds History, and the remaining 5 in the second, and Here My Troubles Begin. You can also get this version, which collects everything in a nice single volume. But the success of Moss is nothing short of a miracle. At the time, DC and Marvel were pretty much the only comic books the mainstream knew existed. Moss is one of those famous every publisher rejected stories. Again, people didn't think you could tell a story about the Holocaust in the comic medium, let alone portray everyone as funny animal characters. Of course, that's one of the first things people will notice about the book, its use of animals to portray the different races. Jews as mice, Germans as cats, non-Jewish Poles as pigs, Americans as dogs, and so on. And yes, for those of you wondering, since I'm a furry, that was a major factor for me to check out the book. I know that's kind of messed up. Art did this to show people just how absurd stereotyping is. When you read the book, you can barely tell one character from another with the minimalist art style, outside of maybe a tiny detail or mostly just having their names called out. That's the point. You aren't supposed to see the genius representation of the Holocaust using mice and cats. Let's be honest, that's grade school symbolism. The metaphor is meant to fall apart. There is one segment that calls this out when Art is talking with his wife about how he should represent her. She's French, not Jewish, but she converted. Does he make her a mouse, a frog, both? Not to mention there are still regular dogs, cats, and rats. So what? Is this following Wicked rules now? You see, the idea of grouping people into a single type falls apart the second you begin to question it. Which makes the story all the more heartbreaking. Art questions in the book if reality is too much for comics. Can he visualize the horrors witnessed by his father that he didn't? If you ask me, that's a yes. This book doesn't hold back. Before we even see a single panel, we are given a glimpse into the depth of madness itself. The Jews are undoubtedly a race, but they are not human. You know, I consider myself lucky existing around this time. I'm part of a time where people were more open to people of different creeds, skin, sexuality, and see them as that. People. Even as a gay man, I have yet to deal with any real form of bigotry, which makes reading this book all the more heart-wrenching. It's all your fault, this war! We should hang you right here on the spot! I don't think I will ever understand how someone can willingly try to degrade another human being because of fill in the blanks. And let me be clear, I know we are still dealing with this kind of BS today, but how do you do that? How can you seemingly pretend you're superior over another? What do you gain outside of a lie to comfort your own insignificance? Oh god, I'm opening up Pandora's box of comments, aren't I? Okay, back on topic. The book goes into full detail about what it's like to see Art's father turn from a wealthy man into a prisoner to all the injustices done in the camps, giving you the feeling of hopelessness, degradation, and despair everyone felt, even though we know he's going to survive. It shows us with devastating detail how the Jewish people were treated. Whether or not it captured the reality, the haunting black and white art will leave its mark. But that's just half the book. The stuff with Art and Vladek's relationship brings up a fascinating compare and contrast to the Vladek of the past and the present. In the past, we see him as someone we can relate to, someone we root will survive. But when you compare that to present Vladek, my god! He drives me crazy. He won't even let me throw out the plastic picture he took from his hospital room last year. He's more attached to things than to people. I really don't know how long I could take him. I really don't. You can almost do a top 10 list of Vladek being a jerk, and Art knows the way his father acts isn't good. It's something that worries me about the book I'm doing about him. In some ways, he's just like the racist caricature of the miserly old Jew. If there's one thing you quickly pick up from the book, is that it's the definition of meta. In fact, there is a behind the scenes book by Art on how he created Moss. You know what it's called? Meta Moss. Its tone moves all over the place, kind of like Moby Dick, but better. At one point, it's a historical nonfiction. Then it's an autobiography, a memoir, a deconstruction about a son dealing with guilt. I know this is insane, but I somehow wish I had been to Auschwitz with my parents so I could really know what they lived through. I guess it's some kind of guilt about having had an easier life than they did. A story where the father sees the injustices done to his people, yet pulls the exact same bull when he encounters blacks. To the question of whether or not the project's success means anything, especially if it's over the dead. Which you would think wouldn't matter as much cause this book brought the comic medium to a new level. A critical and commercial success. Awards out the wazoo. It won a Pulitzer. No comic before then ever won a Pulitzer. What's not to be proud of? No matter what I accomplish, it doesn't seem like much compared to surviving Auschwitz. You got me there. Hell, I remember when classmates would use this book as an excuse to read a comic for their book report. I know, it's kind of messed up. Moss is a one-of-a-kind book. It's seemingly a book built on contradictions, but one that gives more insight to an event few have or will ever experience. It doesn't give an answer or a message to the events it transpires. In fact, the book kind of ends abruptly. It just gives us a chance to look at a son wishing to tell his father's story. I want to tell your story, the way it really happened. If for whatever reason you haven't read a comic, this is as good of a place to start to see what a comic can do. What about you, Internet? What's your opinion about Moss? A special shout out to Cheater556 for this suggestion. Really interesting username, but thank you for your support. If you have a suggestion, write it down in the comments. Next week, we move away from the dreary world of World War II to deal with Vietnam. I really need to start reading more happy books soon. Till next time. Have a nice day.